So I never expected becoming a PNGTuber to change my life. That sentence already sounds weird enough that I feel like I need to explain what a PNGTuber is before someone thinks I joined a cult based around transparent image files. I don't think anyone would think that. I don't really know why I say the things I do, but here I am. I guess a version of me. A PNG tuber is basically someone who uses a digital avatar instead of appearing on camera. The avatar reacts when you speak. It might blink, move slightly, change expressions, or do some small animation. Mine is this dark blue velvet hoodie wearing figure with gloves and a smooth mask with no features. I kind of wear this outfit in real life too sometimes. I used to record videos in it, in fact. I originally decided to go faceless for a number of reasons, which, I've talked about them in so many other videos that I'm not going to annoy you with it. And since I wear the hoodie all the time anyway, the character made sense aesthetically. It looked like it belonged in a forgotten TV broadcast, but also it literally was a part of my daily life. What I didn't realize was that this little character was going to solve a problem I had been struggling with for years. Recording hurts. I don't mean that in some kind of figurative or artistically deep way. Podcasting can be emotionally difficult, obviously, but I mean that the physical act of recording usually leaves me in a state where I finish the episode and no longer have any energy to enjoy any of the work that comes afterward. I've had 2 laminectomies. I deal with nerve pain, rib pain, headaches, stomach issues when there's a flare-up, and a collection of these really awkward physical symptoms that seem to rotate depending on which part of my spine has decided it hates me that day. Sitting upright, like I am right now, is especially difficult. Because of the complications around my surgeries, when I sit or stand straight, my breathing can develop to stutter. I take a breath, but my sternum seems to contract a few extra times afterward. It feels as though my body is attempting to add punctuation to the breath, just for no apparent reason. Speaking while that is happening can feel awkward, tiring, and kind of alarming. So that's why I like this so much. As you can see, I'm sitting upright with my legs crossed, with no issues really. In real life, I'm working towards sitting this way with ease. Now, if we added a camera to this, a camera changes the physical requirements of recording in ways that I think people don't always notice. You have to sit in a position that looks reasonably normal. Your face has to remain visible. The lighting has to work. And you can't fully collapse into whatever shape your body is asking for that day because you're supposed to look like you're not breaking down. Unless the video is about breaking down, but I feel like highlighting chronic pain like that is kind of exploitative. If pain spikes, you try not to show it. If your breathing becomes strange, you become aware of what your chest and face are doing. When your posture begins slipping because your ribs and spine are exhausted, you notice it on the screen. Then you correct it, which sometimes makes the pain worse, which makes you more conscious of yourself, which makes the conversation much less natural. A person can spend an entire recording trying to look like they're not having a body. That self-monitoring costs energy. And see, right now I'm reading this book, and I really wouldn't be able to read it to you comfortably in real life. Even on days when the episode went well, I would often finish feeling physically wrecked. The recording might be an hour long, but the actual cost continued afterward. I still needed to edit the audio, choose clips, create a thumbnail, upload everything, write a description, fix whatever stupid technical problem appeared for no reason, and unfortunately listened to my own voice repeatedly while wondering why I said a word the way I did. The creative work did not stop when the microphone turned off. For a long time, I treated the recording itself as the main event. I would put most of my physical energy into getting through it, then arrive at the editing stage already destroyed. This created a strange relationship with my own podcast. I loved making it, I cared about the ideas, and I was proud of the episodes. But at the same time, finishing a recording often felt much less like completing something meaningful and more like just surviving some kind of physical test. The middle part of the process became difficult to enjoy. I would hear a good moment while editing and know that it worked, but my body was still dealing with the cost of actually producing it. The pleasure had been drained out of the process before I even had a chance to experience it. That's a frustrating place to live as an artist, and I know a lot of people are scared of using that word, but I just did, and I'm not scared. You create something because you want to express yourself. The expression happens, but the method takes so much from you that you can't fully be there for the result. Then I started using this avatar. At first, it was just fun. I had this strange little silver-faced character moving when I spoke. I could sit in front of a gloomy forest, float beside a screen, or appear during a stream without requiring me to set up a camera. It made the whole thing feel like a broadcast instead of a video call. The practical benefit appeared almost immediately. I could record while physically comfortable. That sounds embarrassingly simple, but it really did change my whole life. I could lean back, I could shift position. If my ribs started hurting like they are right now, I could move without worrying that the audience would see me adjusting like every 10 seconds. If I needed to close my eyes while talking, nobody would assume I was falling asleep or having some kind of medical emergency. My breathing could be strange without becoming part of the visual performance. I did not have to dress for a camera, manage lighting, try to breathe in the mask, or maintain the general appearance of who hadn't physically been negotiating with a chair for the last half an hour. The avatar looked the same regardless of what my body was doing. That consistency, for me at least, created an unexpected sense of safety. I think when you live with chronic pain, your sense of self can become tangled with how you appear physically. You wonder whether people can tell you're hurting. You wonder if your face looks tired. You become conscious of every movement that might look unusual. There's also pressure to prove that you're okay. People don't always understand chronic pain because it changes so much from hour to hour. You can sound energetic while lying in a position that would look ridiculous on camera. Or you can laugh and make jokes while one side of your body feels like it's literally being electrocuted. Pain doesn't always create a face that the camera or a person understands. The avatar removed that issue completely. It didn't need me to look okay, it just needed my voice. I started noticing that I was more comfortable talking. My thoughts could wander kind of naturally, and I was much less concerned with how long the recording was taking because my body wasn't trapped inside a visual setup. The conversations felt much looser. I felt like I could focus on the subject instead of splitting my attention between the subject, my posture, the camera, and honestly the increasing ache in my ribs, which it's been 4 years. It's kind of insane. Of course the improvement was physical, but it also changed how honest I could be. Cameras create this bizarre kind of vanity, even when you're not especially vain. Seeing your own face while talking makes you monitor yourself. You end up noticing your expressions and think about how you look while you're telling a story. I think part of your attention stays outside the conversation, with watching you perform the conversation. And I think that definitely alters speech. People become a bit more formal or they correct themselves. They try to look engaged rather than simply actually being engaged. I think even vulnerability can become this kind of visual performance because you know what your vulnerability looks like. Behind the avatar, I stopped watching myself. That was really liberating. The silver mask has no expression. It doesn't smile when I make a joke or frown during a serious section. I think the audience has to listen to my voice and decide what that moment feels like. And I know that's hard given my robotic monotone, but I don't know why I sound like this. I think that made me more expressive vocally because the voice had to carry everything. The avatar also gave me permission to be strange. My normal podcast voice was already personal, but I think the character created a little distance between my everyday self and the act of broadcasting. I could enter a different mode without feeling like I was faking it. I think when I look at writers, I see that they do this all the time. They use a narrator, a pen name, a character, or a particular kind of voice. The distance isn't there to hide the truth, but it sometimes does make the truth easier to approach. For me, the mask has become a container. I can talk about pain, spirituality, occult history, stupid things I've done, meditation, movies, and whatever else I want without feeling like my physical appearance has to match the tone. That turned out to be more important to me than I expected. There is a common idea now that showing your face is more authentic, and I understand why people think that. A face provides information. You can see reactions, emotion, discomfort, and it creates this sense of direct human contact, but still, I think authenticity isn't the same thing as visibility. Someone can appear on camera and perform a version of themselves that has been carefully cleaned up for the audience, and another person can speak through a cartoon frog and tell the truth more directly than they ever have before. I don't think the medium dictates the level of honesty, rather the person does. So for me, the avatar reduced the number of things I had to manage before I could speak honestly. Even now I'm thinking, do you want me to switch the background? Do you want me to do something? But I don't need to, I'm just talking, and I can keep talking. Which I guess to some people isn't a good thing because talking endlessly is slightly terrifying. That made the podcast feel more authentic, even though the audience was technically seeing less of me. I think I'm able to be more present because I don't need to present myself. That difference is kind of affecting how I live every day right now. A lot of modern content creation is built around presenting the creator as a complete package. The face, room, clothes, maybe some body language, the background, the brand. I'm trying to think of other stuff. And it's there. The ideas are just one part of the image. And this can be exhausting even for someone who's healthy. For someone with chronic pain or illness, the presentation layer can become the thing that prevents the work from happening. The body has a limited budget. If most of the budget is spent maintaining the appearance of comfort, very little remains for curiosity, humor, and editing. The PNGTuber allowed me to move the budget. I could give more energy to the actual subject. I think the physical comfort also made the post-production work easier. I finished recordings with more left in me. Editing became much less of a punishment because I wasn't starting completely exhausted. I could hear the episode and actually enjoy it. And I know that doesn't sound like much to you, but to me it means a lot. I think there's a difference between knowing you made something good and having the capacity to feel good about making it. I think my chronic pain often stole that second part. I would complete the project, but instead of being satisfied, I would just feel relieved that it was over. The main emotion was that the task was over. When the physical cost finally dropped, I think a lot of the joy returned for me. I could experiment with transitions, backgrounds, and little avatar movements, and all the weird visual details that make this kind of feel alive. The extra creative work became possible because the basic recording no longer killed me. Of course, I did replace my face with the avatar, but I think the bigger thing I did was I made room for the rest of my art or my ideas. I think accessibility is often misunderstood this way. People imagine accessibility as some kind of compromise, like the original proper version of an activity exists, and then a reduced version is created for someone who cannot do it normally. I think my experience has been the opposite. The accessible version became much more creative than the regular one. I don't think using the avatar made Idiot Mystic smaller. I think it opened this entire visual language that didn't even exist while I was on camera. The silver mask, the hoodie, the pine forests, the TV static. I think all of that came out of a practical need. Pain forced a design decision, and then I guess that design decision became part of the identity of the project. And this happens throughout art and tech and almost anything you look at. Limitations create style. If a musician has limited equipment, they usually develop a sound around it. If a filmmaker can't afford a large set, shadows and suggestion become part of the atmosphere. And if a writer can't describe something directly, they find a better metaphor. And while limitation is real, I don't want to romanticize pain. Pain is not secretly wonderful because it makes people creative. Most of the time, pain is inconvenient, exhausting, repetitive, and super boring. Still, once the limitation exists, I think adaptation can become meaningful. The Avatar was an adaptation that turned into an artistic choice, right? That's pretty different from pretending that the limitation never happened. I spent a lot of time trying to create as though my body did not have unusual requirements. I thought the professional version of recording meant sitting upright, looking presentable, and pushing through. I think that approach made what I wanted to do much harder than it needed to be. There's this stubborn idea inside many creative people that suffering proves seriousness. If you're exhausted after making something, you must have given it your all. If the process was comfortable, you probably cheated. I don't believe that anymore. Pain is not some kind of quality control system, and I think people who tell you that are dealing with some stuff. Deep stuff. An episode doesn't become better because my ribs hurt while I recorded it. There's no artistic prize for arranging the microphone in the least sustainable position and refusing to move for 90 minutes. Sometimes I think professionalism means building a process that you can actually continue, and that process might end up looking unusual from the outside. I've recorded while reclining. I've moved the mic into positions that would make a traditional studio engineer just punch me or leave the room. I've used an animated masked figure to represent me because that figure can sit upright longer than I can. The result is that I make much more work, I speak more freely, and I enjoy more of the process. I think that's a good trade. And there's another part of this that I didn't expect. The avatar changed how I felt about being perceived. When you use a character, people connect with it in a different way. They recognize the silhouette and they notice small changes in the hoodie or mask. The character becomes familiar while still staying mysterious. I think it gives the audience something to look at without making my body the subject. That feels really valuable when the body has already demanded so much attention in private. Chronic pain makes you tired of thinking about the body. Appointments, symptoms, flare-ups, breathing, energy. The body becomes the loudest person in the universe. I did not want it to become the visual center of the podcast too. I think the avatar gave me control over that boundary, over my boundaries. I can talk about pain when it serves the episode, but I don't have to visually demonstrate pain every time I appear. I think that really protects something. It allows me, or the person with the condition, to remain larger than the condition. The character can be funny, ominous, curious, stupid, or completely silent. It's not reduced to being the chronic pain avatar. And I think that gives me range, and it would give you range too if you tried this. I think many disabled or chronically ill creators understand this instinct. Sometimes you want to speak openly about the body. On another day, you want to discuss aliens for 2 hours without your posture becoming public evidence. Accessibility includes the ability to decide when the condition is part of the story. The PNGTuber helped me make that decision for myself. But I'm also aware that this whole thing can sound absurd to people who did not grow up around streaming or online avatars. A digital character made you more comfortable speaking? Yes. Human beings have always used masks. Theater, ritual, superheroes, even radio hosts used voices and names that were larger than their everyday selves. Even the suit someone wears to work can function as a character they step into. And while the technology we're using is new, this instinct to mask is ancient. A mask can hide, but it can also concentrate. When the face disappears, something else becomes more noticeable. And for me, that was my voice. I began trusting my voice more. I stopped believing that people needed constant access to my physical presence in order to connect with what I was saying. The episodes could stand on their own. The avatar then became a companion to the voice rather than a distraction from it. And this also changed the way I think about confidence. I used to associate confidence with being able to appear on camera regardless of how I felt, push through, sit up, speak clearly, and maybe look whatever normal is. That was a very physical version of confidence. It relied on proving I could override discomfort. Maybe it comes from a lifetime of combat sports and the environment that they produce. I don't know. But I think the avatar taught me a different form. Confidence can mean understanding what allows you to work well and choosing it without embarrassment. You don't have to use the most difficult method to prove the work is legitimate. You're allowed to make the process fit your body. I know that sounds obvious, but people with chronic conditions are often trained to think the opposite. The world has a standard way of doing something, and you spend a lot of energy trying to imitate it closely enough that nobody has to adjust it. Eventually, you may realize that the standard method was never sacred. It was just common. Just like a camera, a desk chair, and sitting upright is common. None of those things are the podcast. The podcast is the thought, the voice, maybe the listener, and I guess the strange connection that forms between them. Everything else is just equipment. Once I understood that, I became less embarrassed about adaptation. I think I also became more playful. The character could appear in places I never could. It could float in a forest, sit inside a weird old library, or dance badly before a stream. I haven't debuted the dance animation yet, but it exists. I think the last part is important because a real version of me dancing before every stream might create an entirely new medical issue. The avatar can do stupid things without demanding anything from my body, and for me there's joy in that. Pain limits spontaneity. Before doing something simple, you calculate the cost. How long will I sit? Can I recover afterward? Will this aggravate the nerve pain more? Do I have enough energy to pick up this bucket of water to fill my son's aquarium? These are the questions I ask. The character creates a small area where those calculations really loosen up. I can make the avatar move, react, or inhabit a scene while I remain physically safe. The creativity is still coming from me, but I think the physical burden is being distributed differently. And this is one of the best uses of technology I have personally experienced. I think technology is often marketed as a way to make us faster, more productive, or even more impressive, but I don't think those are always meaningful improvements. The avatar made me more comfortable. Comfort gets treated like a weak goal, but for me, comfort created endurance. When the body is not constantly defending itself, attention becomes available for other things. I think a more comfortable creator might become a more thoughtful creator. They might end up listening better, taking risks, and stay curious for longer. Discomfort is useful in certain situations. Training requires it, growth often involves it, but that doesn't mean every activity improves when you make it painful. Recording is already demanding enough. The ideas deserve your energy, and I still have physical problems when I podcast. The avatar isn't some kind of magic pill. It doesn't remove pain, fix my spine, or make breathing normal on a difficult day. What it changes is the number of physical demands surrounding the pain. The reduction is enough to alter the whole experience. A tool never needs to solve everything to change someone's life. It just has to remove the obstacle that was taking the most unnecessary energy. For me, that obstacle was performing normalcy while trying to speak. Now the little masked figure has taken over the performance, and I kept the voice. I think this arrangement has made me feel closer to Idiot Mystic and what I'm doing. It's made recording feel less like a test of how long I can tolerate my body, and more like the reason I began podcasting in the first place. I just wanted to talk about stuff. I wanted to follow ideas, tell stories, maybe sometimes make someone laugh, and create something that could meet another person when they needed it. It seems like none of that required my face, it just required my presence and attention. So the strange irony is that hiding behind the avatar made me more present. And I know that sounds like the kind of thing people say in a documentary right before the music swells, but I think it's very true for me in a practical way. I had much less to manage, and there was more of me left to talk, and that's what changed my life. Not the technology by itself or the novelty of having a character. Just the fact that the avatar allowed the creative process to stop fighting my body at every stage. I started recording in the position I needed, and I could speak without monitoring my face. I saved energy for editing, and I could create a visual world without making my pain visible, unless I chose to discuss it. I started enjoying this again, and that might be the thing I care about most. People often focus on whether a creative project succeeds publicly. Views, downloads, subscribers. I guess the other kind of success is much more subtle. Can you remain in a relationship with the thing you make? Can the process sustain your interest without destroying your body? Are you able to feel satisfaction before the next task begins? I think the PNGTuber helped me answer those questions differently. I don't think of the avatar as something I use instead of showing myself anymore. I think it's part of how I show myself. The mask is visually empty, but I think the voice behind it has become more comfortable, more playful, and I think even more honest. There's a lesson in that for anyone whose body, anxiety, disability, appearance, or any other circumstances make a standard creative process difficult. You might not need more discipline, you might just be in need of a different interface, like I was. The work doesn't have to look the way it looked for everyone else. A camera can be replaced, a chair can be changed, a schedule can be bent. A character can stand in for the body on a day when the body has already done enough. Adaptation is not surrender. It's how people continue. This has been Idiot Mystic, and apparently one of the best things I ever did for my real body was make a fake one. See you soon.